Hi everyone, this is Kate Barlow. Thank you so much for having me. Tonight I am going to be talking about supervision and management for occupational therapists. So a little bit about myself. I was a director of rehab for just over 3 years, but what I really want to focus on more tonight is about leadership. And there are a lot of leadership roles that we can take on, even if we are not in a management position. Some of the current leadership roles that I currently have are I am on the WIC Developmental Monitoring Advisory Team. I am also the CDC's Massachusetts Act Early Ambassador. I am the founder and chair of an international interprofessional mentorship program. I run once a month. I am on the executive and advisory and mentorship team for Occupational Therapy Without Borders. I am a member of the AOTA Community of Practice Mental Health in Schools. I have been on the WFOT University of Guyana Task Force since 2018. I have been an AOT PAC ambassador since 2017, and I'm an associate member to the planning board for the Commission on Disability for the town that I live in Wilbraham, Massachusetts. So it just gives you an idea of some of the different leadership roles that I have, local, national, and international. So today's objectives are really for me to express the importance of mentorship and leadership within our field of occupational therapy. I also want to identify leadership opportunities within your current work environment. And I also want to identify key components to employee retention and job satisfaction for those of you who are currently managers. So I'm not sure if many of you watch The Office, but my children love The Office, and Michael makes me so nervous. I get nervous watching him, what he's going to say and what he's going to do. And what I want to express to everyone is that there are real answers to what makes a great leader out there. There are lots of research available. We as occupational therapists, if we find ourselves in a management position, we didn't go to school for that. And management really requires an additional skill set. So I strongly encourage everyone to go to the library, go to a bookstore, and look at all the books that are out there on management and leadership, because it's really helpful. And I think it's really important that we accept and acknowledge that we really have to learn a new skill set when we enter into a management position. Okay, so our first poll, if everyone wouldn't mind. So I like this slide. It says, successful leadership is best seen in the growth of others.
All right, so it looks like we have a wide mix here. We have 35% saying they're in a supervisor role, 9% saying manager, 15% saying other leadership position, and 41% saying not currently in a leadership position.
Okay, great. Well, thank you for that feedback. It's nice to really know who the audience is. So it's great that a lot of you aren't currently in a leadership role, because I'm going to talk on the next couple slides about some opportunities that you can have both at your work and within the field of OT. So what are some leadership roles that you could have in your current position? So whether you're in a rehab hospital, SNF, outpatient, school-based, EI, everybody needs a journal club. If we want to stay evidence-based practitioners, we really need to keep up to date. And I think if your current workplace doesn't already have a journal club, then organizing a journal club would be an amazing leadership opportunity. You know, finding an article, discussing that article, finding a date and time, a place. You know, everyone needs someone to really take that leadership role to organize that. So if you don't already have a journal club, I highly recommend that you be the person that organizes one. Many places also need someone to coordinate fieldwork students. So sometimes this falls under a manager, and it's a lot of work. So if you find that you have a really busy manager, why not volunteer to be the coordinator for fieldwork students? You'll then be networking with multiple schools. It's a great opportunity to collaborate. If, depending on what your department looks like, you may have OTPT, speech and language, maybe social work, depending on where you work. You have all these different students. And I think it's a really great opportunity to really show your leadership strengths, and your manager will really appreciate you taking on this extra responsibility that they currently have. Another role in the workplace that's important is coordinating the social committee. Maybe you don't have one. I feel like I've never worked where there is one, only like one time, but it's really important to recognize people's birthdays or the passing of one's mother, or some of these events in our lives that someone graduates and gets their doctorate, and just to have someone send a card that the whole staff signs and recognizes these monuments for staff members. I think that's really important to do. And so, can you be the person that volunteers to, collect 20 bucks at the beginning of the year, and then you buy all the cards for the employees? So I think it's really important for the morale and the teamwork that people's birthdays aren't forgotten. And so who's going to do that? We really need someone to volunteer to take on that position. Of course, mentoring, which is near and dear to my heart, but mentoring is so important. So if you are someone who has more than 5 years experience and you see a new grad coming, they need so much mentoring. So are you available to spend a little bit of extra time, sharing your knowledge with this new person who's there? And even if you are not even have 5 years, but you have institutional knowledge, where are the towels? Where are the pulse ox kept? Sometimes just even providing that extra support is really helpful. And if you're also a new grad, but at least those few things, and you feel like, okay, this is where you put your lunch, those types of things, they really help someone feel welcome, and it's important. Sometimes places where you work will have a formal preceptor program, and so they're always looking for volunteers for the preceptor program. So you will be assigned a new employee that you will be their go-to person for the first 3 months that they're employed, give them tours of the building. You might have an orientation checklist you need to walk them through. Here's where the AADs are in the building, etc. So volunteering for that is, again, another leadership role. Sometimes different places where you work, they might have steps, and one of those steps might be to be a senior therapist. So maybe you're working towards becoming a senior therapist so that you can provide some clinical supervision. Being a fieldwork educator only requires 1 year of experience, and I feel that it's really great to be a fieldwork educator because I feel it brings a lot of tacit knowledge that you have, and you know how to do it, but when you have to explain to someone else what you're doing, it really helps you learn it that much more, where you're really having a new understanding of what you're trying to use clinical reasoning words for, and it just makes you learn things on a whole nother level. And so I highly recommend everyone, if you have at least 1 year of experience, volunteer to take a student. And especially right now with COVID, the students, a lot of their placements have been canceled, and so it's just really important that we all step forward right now and take students if possible. And then there are your typical leadership roles at work, where you may be a supervisor, you may be a manager, you may be the department director, or maybe you're even the building administrator. And these are all great leadership roles within your work environment. And this is not an all-inclusive list, but these are some of the ones that I was able to think of. And now on this slide, we're going to talk about leadership roles within our actual field of occupational therapy. And so these don't have anything to do with where you work. And so you can do these things regardless of what your setting is, a hospital, SNF, school-based EI, outpatient, inpatient. It really doesn't matter because all of the different fields have these OT leadership roles. And of course, mentoring, I feel like, is so important. You can be a mentor to someone and they don't even have to live in the same state, just really reaching out and being there for someone and really helping them within their career. And mentors, you need a mentor for every step of your career, because I feel as though, when you're a new grad, you need one kind of mentoring, but what about when you take a new job as a manager? Or what about when you enter into academia for this first time? That's a different kind of mentoring. And then when you've sort of got the teaching down and then you move into research, well, now you kind of need a research mentor. So I feel like regardless of where you are in your career, everyone really benefits from having a mentor. Another leadership role is being involved in AOT PAC. So In the bottom left-hand corner of your screen is Dr. Sarah McKinnon, and she has been the Northeast Regional Director for the past few years. She has been an amazing leader, and her position as the Regional Director is actually, her term is ending in December, and so she is running for the AOTA Board of Directors. So a little plug for Sarah. She has been incredible. So, and every state is looking for AOT-PAC ambassadors. So this is a volunteer position that you can have and really help advocate for our profession. Massachusetts and every state has, we have our Massachusetts OT Association, and most every state I think has one. And so there's board members, there's conference chairs, and we also need people who are willing to volunteer their time to present, share their expertise. So in the top left-hand corner, I have a picture of Dr. Tina Champagne. She is a member of the Massachusetts OT Board, and she's also been a huge advocate for our profession. Right now, she's been working on having occupational therapists as a qualified mental health practitioner. I think there's only one state right now that currently has OTs as qualified mental health practitioners. And I personally believe that is the best thing that we could do for our profession, is to have all states recognize us as qualified mental health practitioners. And so Tina Champagne has been an amazing advocate working to really advance our profession in this area. Another thing that we can do to be leaders is Massachusetts has special interest groups. So in the top right corner is a picture of Dr. Allison Sullivan, and she is the Western Region Massachusetts OT Mental Health Special Interest Group Chair. So the MAOT SIG Chair for Western Mass Mental Health. Again, another great leadership role that she does and volunteers her time. She has presenters come to the meetings, schedules them, sends out emails, and really gets everyone together. In the bottom is Colleen Cameron Whiting, and she is the AOTA Community of Practice Chair for the community of practice that I'm in, the mental health in schools. These are all Massachusetts people, so I apologize if you're not from Massachusetts, but I just wanted to highlight some local leaders that we have here in Massachusetts. So another thing that you can do is really volunteer for WFOT or WHO, the World Health Organization. There's lots of different opportunities to volunteer for them. Dr. Saeed Nafai, that works at AIC with me, he volunteers for both of these organizations and has done amazing work for them. And he also is a really big advocate for people with lymphedema. So the next one on the list is really advocating for a cause. So maybe something that's near and dear to your heart, women with breast cancer, children with autism, and you really want to advocate for that specific cause. Always need volunteers, and that's another leadership role. And lastly, I have listed a board member for local, national, or international groups. So, being on like the Commission of Disability, like I am for my town, or for a national or international group like OT Without Borders. So there's lots of opportunities for OTs if you're looking for a leadership opportunity. So leadership requires a mixture of both skill and desire. When we talk about managers, supervisors, and mentors, we hope that they will all be amazing leaders, but sometimes you have amazing leaders that are not in a manager or supervisor role, and sometimes you have leaders that are in a manager or supervisor role. So I think when we talk about what we really want for a good manager or a good supervisor or a good mentor, we really want someone who is a good leader. And so you really can't talk about management or supervision or mentors without talking about leadership. They're just entwined. So let's talk about the difference a little bit between the three. So when we talk about managers, we talk about someone, when you read the text, we'll talk about they plan, they organize, they direct, and they control. Managers are really there they maintain stability. They do the hiring and the firing. They are there to, set the policy and procedures. They have this focus on structure and efficient systems. And they are really there to make sure that the performance standards are being followed. When we talk about supervisors, supervisors are really focused on the control and direction of work for improved performance, better outcomes. So what are your clinical skills? How are we improving patient outcomes? And the supervisors are working underneath the managers. So they're really following the management direction. So let's say if we have competencies, the manager would then decide what the competencies are for that department, and maybe the supervisor would then give all the competencies to the workers and check to make sure that they're competent in those specific tasks. Mentors, on the other hand, are different in that they are focused on career development, but they provide psychosocial support. And so that psychosocial support is what really sets them apart. It's that they are really caring about you as the individual. We talk about mentors, we're really talking about informal mentoring, which we'll get to in a minute. But when we think about that mentor, that's someone who's really reaching out to you, finding the best part of you, and really helping you grow as a professional. There's that big psychological support that they are providing. Okay, so we're going to talk about supervision first. So supervision is defined as the control and direction of work of one or more employees in a manner that promotes improved performance and a higher quality outcome. So the supervisor is monitoring and evaluating work. They are working on development and evaluation of staff competencies. They are supporting you, and they are working on professional development. These are your supervisors. So what kind of characteristics do we want? We want someone who really knows what they're doing, right? We want someone who is a high achiever. They are completely competent in what they're doing. They have self-confidence. They're able to communicate effectively. They are honest and moral, and they instill the sense of value in others, right? So we want someone who is the supervisor who really knows what they're doing, right? And so they're making sure that everyone's up to par and everyone is able to do the job competently. Supervisors are not mentors. So supervisors will perform some of the same functions, but they are not mentors. So they may help you advance your skills, but they're really not providing that psychosocial support and your personal, career development in the same way that a mentor does. So what's important for managers is that the managers need to recognize the professional development needs of their supervisees and assist them in identifying a mentor. So a great time to do this is when you have your annual reviews. So, you have your employee in front of you and you're talking to them, and what do you want to grow? How do you want to grow? How can I support you? And maybe they say, oh, I really want to be NDT certified. And you're like, okay, that's a lot of thousands of dollars, right? And so you don't have anyone that's NDT certified in your building, but maybe you're like, oh, well, the building that's 15 miles away has an NDT certified PT. Maybe I can get you there every other Friday. I can swap therapists and have you in that building so you can develop a relationship with that therapist, maybe co-treat with them and sort of, grow your skills that way until we can get you the NDT certification. And so if I'm going to spend all this money on this certification, here's some things I really need to you. I need your productivity to be at 78%, and I need, X, Y, Z. But so the employee is looking at the manager like they're really helping me. They're seeing what I want to do and where I want to grow, and they're helping me get there, right? And so that's really building that relationship and understanding what's really important to that individual employee. So there's some different types of mentorship. There's formal mentoring. So this is, it's set up at work. It's you're assigned someone, whether you like them or not, they're assigned to you. Maybe you have them for the first 6 weeks or the first 3 months, and then it's like it falls off. It doesn't keep going. And that type of mentoring isn't usually what we're referring to when we talk about mentorship. Informal mentoring is what we normally are talking about when two people come together and they really help each other out and both parties are benefiting from this relationship, and it goes on for a long period of time. There's also peer-to-peer mentoring. this is a picture of my peer mentor. This is Dr. Bonnie Riley. We went through the OTD program together at VCU. She is currently a candidate for chairperson for the Children and Youth Special Interest Section. So AOTA, make sure you all vote. Little plug there for Bonnie. But Bonnie has really been instrumental for me for my own career. So really recognizing in me and pushing me to do things that I would have never done. She invited me for the first time to guest lecture at Shenandoah University, and I was so nervous. And she really pushed me to do that. And after I did the guest lecture, she then pushed me to present at a state conference. So I presented at VOTA, the Virginia OT Association. I was living in Virginia at the time, and I made myself sick. I was so nervous, and I gave myself a migraine. I was so stressed out to present, and it was fine, but I didn't believe in myself that I had enough knowledge and enough skills at the time to be able to present, and she really pushed me to do that. And actually, there was a professor in the audience that then asked me to guest lecture for her, and so here it sort of started my academia track, but she really believed in me and pushed me to do that. And that's what a peer mentor really does. It's really able to ask those questions and push you to really expand your horizon in your career. And then there's also group mentoring and e-mentoring, which we'll talk about. So team mentorship is really sort of the new standard at work when we talk about formal mentoring. And the benefits to team mentorship is that, mentees have a variety of mentors that they can, choose from. And the thought is that the mentors get a break because, they don't have just one mentor. They will have a more manageable workload. And the mentees, can go to different people. And then there's sort of this safety net for unforeseen circumstances. So say one mentor leaves or gets a promotion, and then the mentee doesn't have someone. If you have this sort of team mentorship philosophy, then that doesn't really happen. One of the things about this team mentorship, though, is that mentees kind of always want the same mentors. Like they want someone who's the rock star, right? There's usually a couple people within the department that everybody wants as their mentor. And so sometimes it doesn't really work out when that's the case. There's that saying, if you want something done, ask someone who is busy to do it. Right, so these people that are super busy and go-getters, they're the people that mentees usually want as their mentor. And so many mentors, they're really stretched to the max with their own professional and personal obligations, and they're already committed. So if lots of mentees want the same mentors, that can a little bit be a downfall to that philosophy, but it is growing in popularity. So managers really need to develop this mentoring culture. And the research has shown that it really improves employee retention, it improves morale. If you're a mentee and you have someone who's showing you and teaching you and really is invested in your personal growth, you're going to be absolutely more committed to that organization. And there's also this transference of organizational knowledge. How many years do I have to do to put in before I'm a senior therapist? Or, oh, you should really go to this charity event, or this 5K race because, all of the upper management will be there and it's a nice smooshing event, So that organizational knowledge of someone that's been there a long time is really priceless. But it also, when you have this sort of mentoring relationship, it helps everyone. The newer employees really get that professional growth at a much faster rate, but it also just builds this community of learning. And that's really what we want for any healthcare environment. So mentors are critical for continuing and accelerating the implementation of evidence-based practice within an organization. So this picture here is a picture of my informal mentor, Becky Case. She's a physical therapist when I started working in '98 in the public schools. And my first job, and I had all these children. There was 4 classrooms of children with severe disabilities, and almost all of them were in wheelchairs, and I was really over my head. And she was so amazing. She get all the children out of the wheelchairs. You know, we did NDT and co-treat and positioning for play. And, you know, here's how you make sure they're playing, and here are all these different positioning devices that you can use. And it was amazing. Like, I had never worked with bolsters and the triangles. I can't think of the name of it, but she just showed me how to use all of these positioning tools for play. And then the speech therapist, Tara, would come over, and here's how you do board maker, and here's all these pictures and communication that you use with all the children. So it's like I was learning from the PT and the speech therapist at the same time on my first job. And it was just eye-opening. You know, I was really learning so much about how to be a better OT, because it's important to communicate with your children when you're working with them. And this interprofessional evidence-based mentorship is really the key, right? Everyone benefits from this interprofessional mentorship. And if you as the manager can really build this environment that this is happening, that is ideal. A wedge, that's the word I was looking for, a triangle, a wedge. So mentors help mentees step outside the box of his or her job and personal circumstance so they can look at it together. It is like standing in front of a mirror with someone else who can help you see things about you that have become too familiar for you to notice. So I love that quote. I just wanted to share because I think it's really true. And it's also about that psychosocial support. Just keep bringing it back to that. Mentor is going to really help you. Maybe it's not the right time for you to try to be the WFOT delegate, right? Like, you know what, you have another baby coming. Maybe this isn't the right time, you know? So a mentor, they know you personally, and so they can really help you in a way. And you might want to share things with them that you might not want to share with a supervisor. So mentors ask questions one does not or cannot ask oneself. So there are 3 requirements for successful mentoring, according to Darling. And first, there has to be this attraction between the mentee and the mentor, right? They both need to want to spend time together. They both need to put forth energy towards each other. And they both need to have this mutual respect, because both mentor and mentee benefit from this relationship. Like, this is a mutually benefiting relationship. And so there has to be that mutual respect. You know, mentors, they want a mentee who is able to self-reflect and learn independently. They want these traits. And a mentee wants a rock star. They want a winner. They want someone who is confident and committed and, you know, super knowledgeable. So what a mentor and a mentee are looking for are different, but when they come together, it fits nicely into a puzzle. And I just wanted to mention that you can receive PDUs for mentorship. And so if you were not aware of that, please go on to the NBCOT website and check it out, because I think to really benefit our profession, we all should be providing mentorship. And so, yeah, so it's important to know that you can get PDUs for it. Okay, so poll number 2, what is the most important characteristic of a manager?
All right, so it looks like we have a split around here. We have 59% saying the ability to clearly communicate expectations, 34% saying honesty, integrity, and 7% saying recognize and reward achievement. Okay, that's great. Well, I'm going to go with honesty and integrity as being the most important. And polling different research has also shown that many people feel that is the most important. So moving into this last piece, we're gonna talk about management, and I have some tips for you. And the 4 tips are: 1, be honest. It's so important to just always keep to the true north. Like, keep honest, be ethical. It is really the most important piece to a good manager, is really just making sure that you always be honest and trustworthy. Second is to really be appreciative. Third, hold people accountable. And lastly, be organized. So let's talk about the first one. So this was a poll done of Corporate Leadership Council, looking at
all these different personal characteristics, and what do they feel is really most important in a leadership role. And honesty and integrity had the single biggest impact on leadership. And I'm going to tell you this story because I think it's important, especially if some of you have never been in a leadership or management position. I was asked to work PRN in a building. I had been working PRN, and the regional director left and went to a new company. And she called me and said, will you come work for me? And I was like, sure. So I went to a new building, and the manager there I hadn't met asked me to sign a lot of OTA notes, and I had never met the OTA. And I was like, I can't believe someone, like, I really didn't know what to do. And I remember I left, and during my lunch break, and I called my mom because my mom is a PTA. And I remember I was pumping gas, like basically crying on the phone, being like, I don't know what to do. And she was like, don't sign anything and do not go back to that building. And I felt just so upset that I had been placed in that position. And then a couple years later, my mom called and said, she's a PTA, and said that her manager had called her and said, I was reviewing your billing, and we're short like 3 minutes. Are you sure you didn't see that patient for like an extra 3 minutes? And my mom was like, you know what? That's it. I didn't want to work there anymore. So like the minute that someone asks you to do something unethical is the minute that you don't want to work there anymore. And so I think that is really important to always keep in mind, is that your employees want you to be ethical and honest and always keep the patient first. So really just always hold on to that. And if you're an employee and someone ever asks you to do something unethical, if you can't call your mom because your mom's not a therapist, then just always go with your gut and don't do anything that you think you shouldn't do, for sure. So high morale, employee satisfaction, and the achievement of high levels of motivation are possible during challenging times if employees view their team's work as ultimately contributing to making other lives more fulfilling. And I added this in because I think this is so important, especially right now during COVID, when people are in unbelievable circumstances and work is just really tough in a lot of environments. And so can you, as the manager, just really focus on patient care? Because your staff are therapists and they went into this to help people. And so if you can really try to focus on just patient outcomes and the patient in front of you, I think it really helps to keep moving in a more positive sort of morale. Sometimes, there'll be a building merger and, people are worried about layoffs. And so if you can just focus on patient care, I think that's really important because everyone wants the best for their patients. So just really going back to that, let's keep it focused on the patient in front of us. I think it's really helpful. Okay, so Barnes has 3 elements of leadership: passion, energy, and a focus on quality. So as a leader, as a manager, we want to have these 3 qualities. So I have 3 examples below of OTs in the field that really exhibit these qualities. The first one is passion. And so Dr. Patty Myers, she is the AIC OT director, and she is so passionate about OT. Whenever she's talking, she's like infectious. Like she gets you so excited for whatever she's talking about. Like she's really excited about assistive technology, which is not a field of mine, but I get so excited about it because she's just so excited about it, right? And she asks me to do something, I'll be like, yes, I just want to do it with you because you're so excited about it, right? She's so passionate about OT. You want to be with her and you want to work with her because she makes everything just so exciting. We've taught together before and she's walking around the room and she has all the students so engaged and she's just so passionate about OT that it's infectious, right? And so that's a great quality to have. The second is energy. And for those of you, hopefully, Dr. Karen Jacobs, she is the director of the post-professional OT program at Boston University. She's also an associate dean. She's been the vice president and president of AOTA. She's the founding editor of a journal called Work, a journal of prevention, assessment, and rehab. She's written many books. She's the co-editor of the management text that most schools use. She has so much energy. I was a student at BU, and I swear she has the same energy today that she had when I was there, 93 to 97. She is just so full of energy. And I went to Ecuador with some of her current students a couple of years ago, and they were like, oh, she's amazing. Like, you know, she's up at the crack of dawn, and if you send her a text at 11 o'clock at night, you know, she's answering emails. You know, she's just always has so much energy. And so she's just such a great example of the kind of energy that you would want your manager to have. And the last is focus on quality. And so I have Dr. Stacy Reynolds. She is a professor at VCU. She's also the brand new editor-in-chief of AJOT, so the American Journal of Occupational Therapy. Stacy Reynolds is incredibly focused on quality. She has way over 50 publications, and she just really brings in this research element to really promoting the field of occupational therapy that is so important for our profession. And so can we, you know, combine these qualities of passion and energy and a focus on quality and really bring them together to be the best manager that you can be, because this is what really makes people want to work for you. And I think that's really important. Okay, so some leadership tips by Barnes. So you think that these are really obvious, right? But I just want to review them because I think sometimes we forget. So acknowledge and affirm others. So we really want a manager who is going to acknowledge the strengths and the work of others. You know, really lifting everybody up, trying to get other people promoted, really trying to advance other people. That is important. Having high expectations is also really important. We want everyone to know that you expect really good work. You expect quality outcomes. You expect the patient to be first. You expect good communication, safety, your billing turned in on time, showing up for meetings on time. Remember, you get what you expect, so definitely set those high expectations for your staff. It's also important to manage expectations. I think this is important for everything in life, especially children, but managing expectations with your staff. You know, what did you say when you were interviewing, you know, your future employees? You really need to be as transparent as possible, but also really making clear, you know, you will work weekends. Everyone in New England wants 1 week off in the summer. You know, we can't all have 4th of July week off. You know, what is the expectation for holidays? You know, you will work X amount of holidays. I think it's really important in healthcare that we set the expectations right from the beginning, you know, in that interview room, so that when they come on board, they're not disappointed on their first day of employment when they realize they have to work Saturdays. So really trying to manage expectation, I think, is good for that feeling of fairness, but also for team morale. I think it's really important to be consistent and fair. So if you are in a position where you are having to discipline, make sure that you have documented, and make sure that if another employee does the same thing, that you are handling it very consistently and always documenting. So do the job, be a team player, pitch in. You know, I think this is one of the most important probably pieces, because what we do is hard, right? We're showering, you know, 300-pound people and trying to move people in and out of cars, and, you know, working with children who are really sick. And the conversations that we have and the things that we do are very hard. And you really want your manager to be a team player and part of that. So if you have to work Saturdays, they should also have to work Saturdays. And, you know, I used to tell all the PTs, I'll toilet any of your patients, it's fine. Like, you know, it's totally fine, just come get me. You need a second set of hands, I'll do whatever you need. Like, absolutely, I will come, I will, if the trays are running late and you really need your patient, I will run the trays for your 1 o'clock patients. Like, really do what your team needs you to do in order for their lives to be easier and smoother. Always be positive, humble, and appreciative of your staff. Being positive is really important, but also really being appreciative. So small things that you can do go a really long way. Is it a candy jar at work? Is it, bringing in brownie bites? Is there something that you can do to really show that you appreciate your staff? Being accountable and being organized, again, really important as a manager. So attention to quality outcomes is the capstone of effective leadership and ensures success for the organization and for employees as individuals. So just really keep in mind that if you focus on patient outcomes, doing what's right for the patient, taking your time, be safe, if you know that that's the focus and your employees know that that's the focus, then they will take that extra time. They will walk their patient out to the car and they're not going to worry about their productivity because they're going to know that you will support them in doing what's right. And I think that's a key takeaway there. All right, so tip number 2, be appreciative. So praise from managers is the #1 performance motivator, more than financial incentives. So how can we continuously show our employees that we appreciate them? And we think about praise. Remember that you can say to a group full, maybe you have 10, 20, 30, thank you so much, everyone, for all of your hard work. And that's great. But if you, on a one-on-one basis, give very specific feedback, Karen, I loved the way you were interacting with Mrs. Jones the other day. You just have such an amazing rapport with her. You can tell how much you guys really connected and you meant so much to that family. I really appreciate the extra time that you put in to, handle that situation. It was a really tricky situation and you handled it beautifully. That means so much more than telling an entire staff, like, thank you so much, everyone, for all your work, right? So try to be specific and one-on-one when you're giving praise to your employees because it will go so much further and it will build relationships because it will be heartfelt. People don't leave for money, they often leave for supervisors. So have you ever heard that phrase, your job is only as good as your next boss? Well, that is, sometimes the case. So if you have an employee and you feel like that relationship is a little bit off, or you feel like there's some tension there, you need to handle that right away because they're probably looking for another job, right? And so you really want to make sure that you are praising your team, building those relationships, and you're really keeping your key employees. 78% of workers said they would work harder if their efforts were being better recognized and appreciated. So we work in healthcare. Sometimes you might be in a position where you hardly ever see your boss. When I worked in outpatient at Children's Hospital, I think I saw my boss quarterly. She wasn't in the same building. She's packed across the tunnel. So I hardly ever saw her. When I worked in the school systems, I saw my boss at our monthly meeting, right? So sometimes you might work in a position where you rarely see your boss. So really keep in mind that if you are in one of those positions where you don't have daily contact with your employees, it's even that much more important to really recognize some of the things that they do. Can you send emails or call them or even text them if you're not seeing them? Just show your appreciation for what they're doing. And again, just always try to make sure that the praise is specific. Thank you for coming in and showering all those patients. They only get 2 showers a week at the SNF, but thank goodness the OT staff is willing to come in early and give all those showers. So, your higher functioning patients are getting daily showers. It really means so much to the patients. And I really appreciate the effort that you make to get everyone their showers, right? So specific and timely is important to praise. So turnover is by far the largest uncalculated expense in the corporate world. So we're going to talk a little bit about turnover, but this book that I show here is one of my faves. It's A Carrot a Day. And in this little book, it talks about every single day. It's like a 365 book, and it has a daily recognition that you can read. And they're all different, and some of them cost money and some of them don't. But it's a really great reminder and give you different ideas of how you can spice things up and show appreciation to your staff. So it's a good read. So why is retention so important? Retention is extremely expensive. They say it can be up to 250% of that person's salary. So if you work in a hospital or a SNF and your regular employee has just quit on you, are you going to use all PRN to fill that? Are you going to have to hire a traveler? So it can be extremely expensive. It also decreases the reputation of the establishment. So sometimes therapy is a really small world, right? So if you have like this rock star employee who's been at the rehab hospital for the last 10, 15 years, and all of a sudden they leave, people are going to be talking. Why did they leave, right? And here it starts this cycle. And so you really want to make sure that you are holding on to your good employees, because it doesn't look good when they leave. Turnover also really decreases the customer service. So when a good employee leaves, now you're short-staffed. So now your regular employees, are they picking up 2, 3, 4 extra patients a day? Are they having to work an extra Saturday? Is a PRN person filling in? Do you have a traveler? If you have PRN or travelers, they don't have that same institutional knowledge that your regular staff does. You may not necessarily know all the nurses the same way, or the dining staff to really work on someone's meal. They just don't always have that same commitment to the building that a full-time staff has. And when your regular employees are feeling overworked, they're not as happy. And, that shows in patient care. Like, patients notice when their therapists are happy and when they're unhappy. They really notice. So your customer service, right, patients, your customer service absolutely decreases when there's turnover. Turnover also really decimates the remaining workforce. So, people start talking, why did Kate go down the street? Well, they pay $2 more an hour. Well, $2 more an hour, right? Like, we're therapists, a lot of us, what you may make from one building to the next, it's usually not a huge difference in pay. If you're staying within home health or you're staying within a SNF, usually the rates of pay aren't hugely different. But you know what? If you're unhappy, maybe you are going to take that $2 an hour raise, because over time that's going to add up and you've had it. Right? So when someone leaves, everyone else just kind of feels overworked. Why did they leave? Are they getting paid more money? Maybe they're going to start looking, and it just starts this cycle that you really don't want to have going on. And again, retention of key employees is really an important factor to success. Keeping those rock star employees that just do what you ask them to do, right? They never need to be managed. We really need to make sure that we show how appreciative we are of those employees so that we keep them. So we really need to remember that we need to reward our employees. And so how do you do this? Well, there's lots of different ways, but remember, when you praise an employee, they're more likely to repeat whatever it is that you just praised them for. When you praise an employee in front of everyone else, it's also a great communication tool, because now everyone's paying attention, right? And when you are praising another employee, it really helps to bring that relationship. Wow, my manager really appreciates me. She recognizes my work. It's going to make you feel sort of more committed to that manager and that place where you work. And positivity impacts the bottom line. So people who are appreciated, they do better work, right? You're more invested in your patients, you're more positive. When there's better rapport with patients, they have better patient outcomes. So it is this cycle that we need to make sure that we are really promoting this positive atmosphere and rewarding our employees so that they're happy and they are really producing these outcomes that we're looking for. So here's some retention facts. 88% of employees say their biggest beef with their organization is not enough acknowledgement of their work. 9 out of 10 employees feel unappreciated. 80% of employees believe they get no respect at work. These are some really tough facts to read. And I thought about polling the audience. I'm like, maybe that's opening a can of worms, right? So, but how many of you feel that? You know, do you feel that you're not appreciated at work? And so if that's the case, how can you change that? One of the rehab places I worked in Virginia, I worked there part-time and the manager was okay. And then a new manager came along and I loved her. I just super loved her. And then a full-time position in the schools opened up. So I just went to working PRN for her. But she was such a good manager and I literally would have done anything that she asked of me. So she'd call me while I was at work and I'd answer the phone. I had like a 45-minute commute home. She'd be like, will you pop in and do an eval for me? And I'd be like, well, I'm in my school clothes, like chinos. That doesn't matter, just come in. And I'd be like, okay, I did it for her, not because I wanted to, you know, you're kind of tired after a full day's work, but I would do it for Trisha. You know, as she would call me, oh, can you come in this Saturday or Friday, you know, afternoon? Can you come in? There's an eval coming in at 4 o'clock and my OT leaves at 2:30. Would you mind coming in and doing this eval? I would do it for her, right? So if you have that really good manager that really appreciates you and shows you that she appreciates you, you feel like you want to do things for them. It's not for the building, it's not for the company, it's for that manager. And so when I became a director of rehab, I'm like, I want to be like Trisha. I want to be the manager. Well, people would do things for me because they know I appreciate them so much, right? So maybe you have a manager that you remember that you were like, wow, I would have done anything for them. You know, that's the kind of manager. What did they do that really made you feel that you would have done anything for them, right? So that's what we want. We want to retain our employees. And how do we do that? We want them to feel appreciated. So with increased recognition, your turnover decreases, a sense of competence increases, facilitates movement towards achieving set goals, educates employees on company values, increased employee morale and motivation. So bottom line, everything improves when you have employee recognition, right? Make sure it's happening. So let's talk about a little bit more about employee recognition. When you recognize your employees, it increases their productivity. And I was a little afraid when my director above me said, I want you to start posting the therapist productivity, you know, I think it was once a month posting their productivity. And I was afraid it was going to build sort of this negative environment, but it didn't. Instead, it was sort of like this competitiveness that sort of worked amongst the staff. And it actually was really good and it was a positive thing. And I was afraid about it, but when I started recognizing the employees and like giving them prizes for productivity, I think that they really felt appreciated, that I understood that these productivity standards were new and were difficult and we're all working on it together, right? But I think recognizing them for their progress was part of the key. If you also recognize your employees, hospitals that have higher recognition have better safety records. So really think about that. So if my employees feel appreciated and recognized, they're more willing to go the extra mile to ensure patient safety. And that's huge, especially in healthcare. So if we think about, you know, how many falls that we might have, you know, we do some very difficult things. You know, are we having recognition for a month with no falls? You know, are we really making sure that we are recognizing all of the wonderful things that happen that our staff do? and not really just drawing attention to the one fall that happened in the month of December. Oh, here we go. If I make a mistake, I am recognized 100% of the time. When I do something great, I am not recognized 99% of the time. So this is good. This is right. We can just take that falls example. So, you know, you have a therapist and she's been there for 5 years and she has her first fall, and it's so upsetting. You know, usually therapists cry and they're extremely upset, and it's heartbreaking when a patient falls on you. And, you know, and that's a big deal. Well, she didn't have a fall for the first 5 years that she worked there, right? So, you know, can we make sure, if we know safety is really important, can we recognize our small successes along the way so that when we do have an issue, we've made sure that we've recognized all the positive months with no falls. And I think it's important also just to recognize, you know, if you have therapists and they're always on time with their billing, and that one week they're late, just really keep that in mind, right? We need to make sure that we're also providing positive praise. So praise must outweigh criticism by a 5-to-1 margin to achieve a high performance culture. I work in pediatrics, but you always hear it in pediatrics how important it is to provide positive feedback, but I think it's true for employees as well. Okay, so types of recognition programs. There are a lot of different programs out there. My big thing is that make sure it's meaningful. Whatever recognition program that you have, make sure it's specific to your department and it's meaningful. If you work in a small place, a small building, then it can be the whole building, as long as your therapists are being recognized enough, right? I think that's important. Some places will have like a length of service. Oh, after 5 years, you get a pin. I'm not sure how meaningful some of those awards are. Some places will have acknowledgement for above and beyond performance. You know, are there awards given out? I love this. You know, for Rehab Month, we used to do awards, and there was a productivity award and patient rapport award, and we have all these different awards to recognize therapists, and I think that's important. I've seen a lot of peer-to-peer recognition programs, and I think I always wanted to implement one where I was working, and I never did. And I wish I had. And my thing with peer-to-peer recognition, it can be really powerful when it's done well. You know, if you even, you know, Post-it notes and then at a weekly staff meeting, you read them, that's great. People love recognition. Or even once a month, you read them. What we don't want to have is like Post-it notes on a wall that stay up for a year, and then you can't even tell the new ones, and then it just doesn't become meaningful anymore. So whatever recognition system that you have, just make sure that it's up to date, timely, and meaningful. It doesn't have to cost a lot of money, you know, just even reading out peers' recognitions of others. We, as managers, you don't always see what's going on. You don't see, you know, what happened Thursday at 4 o'clock when you left at 3, and you didn't see, you know, one of your employees really helping out at shift change. Like, you just don't, you can't see everything, but your peers see a lot. And so I think those can be really powerful programs. Okay, tip number 3, hold people accountable. So we communicate with the masses, but we manage to the one. So this is something that I feel is incredibly important, and it's an error that I see oftentimes in management. And what does that mean? So if you are trying to manage someone, so there's a problem, you don't want to make an announcement, a general announcement at a staff meeting. I really need everyone to turn in their billing on time, and I need everyone to return their emails within 24 hours, right? So then all the people that didn't do that are like, I do that. Why is she saying that, right? And it just creates this sort of negative atmosphere. When you communicate to the masses, these are things like, oh, there's going to be a linen change. Carts are no longer going to be out on the weekends. They need to be rolled up. Or, you know, there's a new HR director. These are things that you're communicating to the masses. When you have to manage someone, patient complaints, being late, calling out, paperwork not on time. These are the things that need to be one-on-one. You don't want to have your rock star employees sitting in front of you in a meeting when you're talking about those 2 individuals over there, when you have 18 other people that are doing everything. It's not fair to the other 18 people. You need to meet with those 2 people individually and let them know what they're doing. And you need to document that, because we need to hold people accountable as managers. So it's really important, again, that managers not, I didn't want to confront them, or I didn't want them to feel bad. No, you're making everyone else feel bad when you do that. So really make sure that if you have to manage something, a situation, that it's done one-on-one. When you don't deal with poor performance, you send a message to the rest of the team. You send a message to the high performers that what they're doing is not important. This is a silent and deadly message to send. So I love this book. It came out last year, Be the Best Boss. I teach management at AIC, so I try to buy a new book over the winter break every year and sort of keep up with all the new management books. And they're easy reads, they're fun reads. And this one was really great, but it's so true. If someone is constantly late to the staff meeting, or someone is, they have really awful notes and they're just whipping through them and doing a really poor job, and everyone sees them and they keep getting away with it, then why should everyone ruin their productivity to put in these really good notes, right? So we need to make sure that we're holding people accountable. When you have someone who is failing, look at it as a rescue mission. They are either in the wrong job or they need to perform better. They didn't join to fail. So consider how you can rescue by either training and developing, or help them, to move to a new role where they are better suited to succeed. So this is great, right? Like, I love this, because when someone's not doing well, it's not a good feeling as a manager. So looking at it as like a rescue mission. Okay, listen, we really need to bring your performance up. Like, I really need this to improve. Let me help you. What can we do to improve this? And if they're just miserable, are you sure you want to do this? Is this the right setting for you? I worked in outpatient pediatrics. It's really fast paced. Like, it's boom, 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 boom. And I had someone once, and it did not seem like a good fit, right? And so, having that conversation, like, school system is a really much slower pace, but it's seeing pediatrics. You have the amazing bonds with the teachers and the rapport, and you work in this collaborative environment with the PTs and the speech therapists. Not every environment is for every therapist. And so sometimes, if you see someone just really failing, help them maybe think about a different setting, or really help them to succeed, right? But we can't let poor performance continue unaddressed. Okay, so some tips for accountability. This is the book I got last year over break. It's called Micro Messaging. This is a really great book. And so being aware of micromessaging and unconscious bias is really important. And if you aren't familiar with those terms, I really would advise you to get up to speed on that. But basically, your micromessaging could be something that you don't even really realize you're doing it. So maybe if you're all women and you're talking about something that's more geared towards females, maybe you're sort of excluding one of the male OTs and you don't even realize you're doing that. And then sort of you're sending a micro message that we're a team, us women, and you're not a part of my team. Or unconscious bias, if you're hiring someone, most people tend to want someone that sort of looks like them and talks like them, so having another person always from your team as part of your hiring panel is really important, so you have another set of eyes going in and doing the hiring, right? Moving to Virginia, there was a lot of people who spoke extremely slow, and I found myself having a hard time adjusting to that really slow rate of speech. And that definitely, I was aware of that bias, but sometimes we're not even aware of certain biases that we have. So really try to be aware of those unconscious bias, but also having someone with you during the hiring process can really help with that as well. Some other tips for accountability: when something happens, always document and respond. We want to make sure that when an employee does something, that we've already had a conversation with them about it, because a performance review should never be a surprise, right? We have objective data. I've met with you 4 times regarding your productivity over the past year, and you really are struggling to really bring that up to where the company wants it to be, right? So you have objective data. We never want to walk into a performance review and an employee is hearing something for the first time. That's really poor management on your behalf if you're the manager. So we need to make sure that we're meeting with our staff regularly, we're communicating the expectations clearly. When we have our our appraisals, that once a year meeting where you're doing your appraisal, I highly recommend doing peer appraisals. It's great objective data. So sending out a couple months ahead of time before your annual reviews are due. Because what I find is, the dining staff, right? Especially for OTs that are in the building early, the dining staff have great things to say. The PTs, the nurses, people from other departments. When this has happened to me, where the building administrators, like, you rate your staff so much higher than anyone else. You give everybody 3s, and the rest of the departments have, a mix of 2s and 3s, and you want all of your staff to have 3s. And I'm like, well, my staff deserve it, and I'm going to go to bat for every single one. And here's all the objective data I have. When the patients are dismissed and they're sent home, look at all of the surveys that come back. They're always praising the therapy staff every single time. Have you had a complaint from my department? Look at what all the nursing staff had to say about this therapist. This is why I'm giving them a 3, because they work well with everyone. They work with activities, dining, nursing, right? So you have all this objective data. It's just not you saying how wonderful this employee is. The whole building is saying how wonderful this employee is, right? So you need that objective data, especially when it comes to giving raises. Sometimes you might work in a place where they're like, well, 80% of your staff can have this percentage. And I used to fight that, like, no, if they deserve it, they deserve it. I'm not going to work in an environment where nobody gets the top score because you always have room for improvement. That's not really true, right? You have these rock star employees that know what they're doing. They should get what they should get. And so we need to advocate for our staff as well. And last, be organized and accountable yourself, right? So always be able to back up what you're doing. Take a breath. Okay, so some ideas. So a 15-minute meeting, I really recommend this time where you meet with your boss. So as the manager, my boss may be the building administrator or maybe a regional director, right? But can you meet with your boss for 15 minutes a week? Sure, maybe some weeks it's 5 minutes, some weeks it gets canceled, but do you have an outstanding meeting once a week where your department's issues are going right to your boss? So you have that face-to-face time once a week. I think this is really important for advocating the needs of your department, especially when it comes to funding and getting some necessary funds for your department. It's also recommended to try to have a 5-minute weekly meeting with your own staff. I'll be honest, I was never able to do that. It just never seemed to work out where I was able to meet with my staff one-on-one. And just a word of caution about that: if you do meet with one employee, you have to meet with all employees. A lot of times managers will be accused of favoritism. So we just always need to be careful about that. If we ask one employee if they want to go to lunch, we need to ask all employees if they want to go to lunch, and same with having an individual meeting. Skip level meetings are amazing. I wish every place I ever worked did skip level meetings. And a skip level meeting is when my direct reports meet with my boss. So it's skipping over me, where the people who report to me are meeting with my boss and I'm not there. And this really allows for my employees to feel like they're validated, feel like the boss is hearing their concerns, and it allows for really a great communication of the problems that are in a building. So if I'm meeting with my boss, my director, and I keep saying how, the 3 to 11 shift change has been really rough. There's a new charge nurse and they're taking like an hour and it's been really difficult. And, you know, I've been meeting with the director of nursing, but we really haven't seen any change over the last 6 weeks. You know, your building administrator is going to be like, okay, keep working on it. But when my staff tell them directly the problems that they're having, you want me to have this productivity, I'm waiting at the nurse station for 20 minutes for someone to acknowledge me. And I'm not trying to put nursing down, I'm just saying these are problems that I've run into in the past. You know, when the building administrator hears that directly from the staff, it all of a sudden has a lot more meaning when they hear it from me every week as the department head. And I recommend not being fearful that your staff are going to say anything negative about you, because if there is something that you're doing, then this is a great opportunity for you to learn and grow and be a better manager and therefore retain your good employees. Okay, so tip number 4, be organized. So we have 15 minutes left, so that's great. We'll go through this. So always set an agenda for your team meetings. Ask for agenda items beforehand. You want to know what the team wants to talk about. And so including everyone's issues is a good way to really build that team environment. You always want to start with old business and then review previous items not resolved. So I had a manager one time, we had these great team meetings and then nothing ever came of it. Like nothing was ever resolved. We talk about these issues, talk, and then nothing ever happened, right? So that becomes frustrating when you realize that's going on. So, you know, if a staff bring up a problem, you're like, okay, you work on that problem. At the next week, you'll be like, all right, I wanted to follow up on problem A. This is what I did. This is the outcome. I'm still working on this. I will keep you posted, right? But it lets your employees know that you're hearing their concerns and you're working on it. Try to always save time at the end for new business. Sometimes, especially in a hospital setting, there'll be things that come up that day that it would be great for the whole team to be able to address. Always photocopy and provide agendas to everybody at the meeting. Be on time and be prepared. I can't stress enough how important it is to start a staff meeting on time, because if you allow staff to roll in 7, 8, 9 minutes late, then it's just going to keep pushing the start time back and back. And it's really going to upset your high performers who are there waiting. And it's really showing that their time is not being respected. Always take meeting notes, post them somewhere where everyone can see them, and send a copy to the administrator. You know, keep it professional. And if you don't have someone like an administrative assistant or a therapy aide to take the notes, please be cautious about not having one person take the notes. You really want all of the staff to take turns taking notes, because we really don't want 1 or 2 people to always be the one that are taking notes. That becomes really unfair. Okay, use the parking lot. So sometimes we'll be in meetings and there'll be an employee who will just go on these derailments where you're talking about issue A and all of a sudden she's talking about issue Z and you're like, whoa, I just totally lost control of this meeting. That can be really frustrating for the other members at the table. So make sure that you rein in that employee, you validate their concerns. I absolutely hear what you're saying. Can we table this? And we'll put this on the agenda for next week. We can try to get this today for new business, but if we don't, we'll definitely put it on the agenda because I feel like this is really important and we definitely want to talk about this. And actually you and I can talk about this after the meeting, but it wasn't on the agenda for today. And I really want to make sure, and to be fair, that we get to the agenda items that people have put forth, right? So you're always going to have that, well, not always, hopefully, but you might have these employees that sort of take over the meeting. And we really need to make sure as the manager that we do not allow that to happen. Okay, so team meetings, you have to pay your employees for team meetings. They can't be during lunch. A team meeting should never be more than 2 hours. You need to make sure that they are held in a physical space that allows everyone to be, well, now they're over Zoom for most people, but everyone needs to be at the table together. You can't be in a conference room where only certain people are at the table and everyone else is along the edge. That doesn't work. Make sure that you're not allowing tardiness and make sure that employees are not talking over one another or interrupting or raising their voice. I've seen this happen quite a bit. I do think it's very cultural. You know, if you're from a huge family and the only way you're heard is to like interrupt and talk louder than the other person, it can happen. And I think people don't necessarily realize that they're doing it when they do it, but it can really shut down the voices of your good employees, and they may not want to participate in the team meetings anymore. So you really need to be aware of that and make sure that you talk with that person individually after the meeting, or if it's appropriate to really interrupt them during the meeting. Okay, don't allow the derailment. All right, so this is a picture of the Beachcomber. This is my favorite place to go on vacation. It may be one of my favorite top 5 places in the world. But the point here is that you need a backup manager. You know, do you want to go away on vacation? Because I know the first time I went on vacation as a director of rehab, I did not have sufficient backup managers, and I was constantly being called on my vacation. So as a manager, you really need to make sure that someone else can fill your position. You need to be able to go on vacation. You need to be able to sit on the beach, right? So make sure that you do that. And you may find that you have 3 different people filling the roles of the manager. But as long as they're competent and gets the job done, it's going to allow you to go on vacation, which is really important. Okay, so lastly, we are going to talk about job simplification, enlargement, rotation, and enrichment. These are things that you can do within your department that is going to provide some intrinsic rewards. It's a little bit motivating, but it's a way to look at your department of some changes that you can make that can have a positive impact on your staff. So job simplification, you know, is there a way for you to allow your staff to specialize in their area of practice? You know, they've achieved this certain level, maybe they become a feeding therapist, right? So they're really specializing the workforce. Job enlargement, providing the ability to continuously learn, adding on to new job abilities, adding new modalities, adding aquatherapy, adding gardening therapy, right? Can the employees continuously learn new skills in their job roles? Job rotation. So I find this really important. You know, working in the public schools, do the same therapists get the same best schools every single year? You know, do those 4 therapists get all the preschools, and then the rest, the 15 other therapists, get, you know, all the elementary, high school, and middle schools, right? So can you build in a job rotation where everyone is getting a chance to have the ideal locations? If you're working in, you know, EI, you know, maybe there's a preferred dietitian, right? And so people are like, oh, I have the other dietitian, right? Can you move the employees around in the teams so that people are learning different skills? You know, if you're always going out to a house with the same speech, you're learning those skills from that speech therapist. But if you're rotating the speech therapist, you're going to learn a whole different new skill set of things you didn't learn before. So it really improves everyone's learning when you're learning from different therapists. You know, if you're working in a hospital, you know, inpatient, outpatient, most people always want to be inpatient, right? And so it's like all the outpatients are waiting for an inpatient person to leave so that they can get on the inpatient rotation. So can it be rotated, right? So if you're rotating inpatient and outpatient, it also provides everyone skills to really keep on top of everything. It really allows for this continuous growth and confidence. And then lastly, the job enrichment, you know, allowing people to take on sort of leadership roles within the job that they currently have, like backup manager or fieldwork supervisor or rehab reunion coordinator, right? So providing these, you know, these extra opportunities for leadership within a job can really be rewarding for employees. Okay, so we're finishing up here, and this is one of my favorite all-time quotes. Self-control is strength. Calmness is mastery. You have to get to a point where your mood doesn't shift based on the insignificant actions of someone else. Don't allow others to control the direction of your life. Don't allow your emotions to overpower your intelligence. I just love that quote, and I think that it's very difficult for someone moving into a new management position. You know, you're going to be faced with things and you don't want that like amygdala hijack where you're like reacting emotionally, because it's an experience that you've never experienced before. So you don't have, you know, a way to handle that you know. So just really think about that and have sort of like a response that you've practiced for when these situations will occur where you're like, wow, I really am going to have to think about that. Can you just give me a couple minutes to process this and I'll get right back to you. Like have something that you're ready to say when you're really thrown a wrench and not sure what to do. Management requires emotional intelligence and training. So as OTs, I know I said this in the very beginning, but I really strongly believe this, that we need to further educate ourselves on how to be an effective manager when we're promoted to this role. I don't think that we can rely on the training we receive to become an OT to really be successful as a manager. I think we need to really further educate ourselves, because I think management requires an additional skill set. Oh, my slide is not advancing. Okay, so anybody have any questions?
All right, so we have a question that came in. What are the best ways to handle upper management when they are not recognizing the supervisors?
So if you haven't already tried a skip level meeting, that might be a nice opportunity for your direct reports to, if the upper administrator isn't really hearing what you're having to say, maybe hearing it from the staff below you might be successful. And if you don't have weekly meetings with your boss, I would also try that, so that you're really getting that face-to-face time.
Okay, let's see. Any other questions? I guess we'll take a last call for questions here. All right. Oh, okay. How many people can one full-time manager effectively manage?
I don't think there's an answer for that. I think it depends on the manager. I know I used to really admire this manager. She worked down in the Virginia Beach and building, and I think she had like 80 people under her, and she was amazing. She was so good. So I don't necessarily think there's a specific number. I think it's more about the skill level of the manager.
Okay, another question that's come in. Do you have any recommendations for leadership courses specifically tailored toward OTs via AOTA or other organizations?
You know, that's a great question. I did bring all of these books I put on the side here of all these books that I've had that I buy, but I don't know of a specific leadership course. I know when I was promoted as director of rehab, they sent me away to a leadership training. It was a 3-day training, but I'm not sure of one through AOTA, but that's a great idea. See, there's the leadership potential right there, making a course.
All right, is it appropriate to serve as the manager and supervisor of an employee? Sometimes the mentorship is wrapped in our roles too.
Yeah, absolutely. I think especially in smaller buildings, you might be the supervisor and the manager, absolutely. And I think sometimes we do serve as mentors, but we serve some of the functions of a mentor, but I do think it's really important that we help the people under us find an actual mentor that has their interests at heart. So they're interested in feeding, getting them a feeding mentor. They're interested in NDT, finding someone for them that's really interested in NDT.